Assalamu alaikum and peace to all of you. I am Muqtadar Khan. I am a professor at the University of Delaware. I teach international relations and Islamic studies. I'm here with Rumi Khan, who is an 11th grader from Newark Charter School, and we are going to reflect on the major events that affected the Muslim world in 2015. More or less, it has been a terrible year for Muslims in general, and some of the major events that really impacted us are the ones that we would like to discuss today. So Rumi, what do you think are the major events that affected the Muslim world in 2015?
Well, right off the bat, in the beginning of 2015, we saw the Yemeni civil war, which pitted insurgency against the government and saw many different actors from across the Middle East supporting various sides. Then we saw ISIS and Boko Haram seizing the headlines, doing terrible acts of violence and injustice. And of course, there is the Syrian crisis, which has rocked Europe and has exacerbated all sorts of xenophobic and anti-immigration sentiments, and has basically completely taken over the EU in terms of what the discourse is about. And also, we can't forget the incident where a Turkish anti-aircraft missile shot down a Russian jet when it was violating its airspace. That is kind of a big deal because it pits two military powers in a hot conflict against each other. One a member of NATO and one is Russia. And considering that they're both using their armed forces in the Syrian crisis right now, backing different regimes, that could lead to some serious international tension.
Well, I understand the other events, but I'm intrigued by your picking the Turkish shooting of the Russian jet as an important event. Could it continue to have any impact in 2016?
Well, yes, because Russia's going to launch some sanctions against Turkey, which could seriously hurt its economy, considering it's supposed to be a growing power in the future years. And in addition, this has also brought, like, when Turkey shot down the jet, this was a big deal in NATO, right? And considering Russia has done a lot of aggressive acts, especially in Crimea, this could just be part of another series of ongoing conflicts between the West and Russia.
Yeah, I also think that there is a potential for engagement of big power politics in the region. It could even trigger some kind of hostile face-off between the United States and Russia because of the relationship that Turkey has with the US as members of NATO. But the most important thing to me, at least, was definitely the Syrian refugee crisis, because it has exposed several things. One of the things that it has exposed is the failure of the nation state, particularly in the Arab world. As nation states collapses, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Somalia, or even Syria, we can see that it is causing Muslims and Arab refugees across Europe, but it's also placing a lot of tension in Europe as well as in North America. But I think that besides these events, I look at things from an American perspective often, and I think it has also exposed the failure of American foreign policy in the Middle East, and it has also shown that while the US is willing to engage in the Middle East, it's not willing to accept many refugees either from Syria or Iraq.
So, what do you think of, like, the current Islamophobic trends in the United States right now, especially during the selection with characters like Donald Trump and Ben Carson? Would you say it's as bad as it was in 2008 or 2012?
Well, 2012 was when Islamophobia became mainstream, with people like Newt Gingrich using the Ground Zero Mosque as a way to demonize Islam and Muslims. It came as a shock that mainstream politicians would talk about Islamophobia. But I think we are seeing the worst today. People like Donald Trump and Ben Carson, even those who are not anymore in the campaign, such as the governor of Louisiana, Bobby Jindal, they have made extremely venomous comments about Islam and Muslims, but they have been rewarded. Ben Carson raised $1 million in 24 hours when he said that Muslims should not be in the White House. And Donald Trump, no matter how racist a comment he makes, no matter how outrageous a statement he makes, such as banning Muslims or shutting down mosques, his approval ratings continue to go and he garners more support. So I think that we are going to see this election cycle, really ratchet up Islamophobic statements. My biggest fear is that hate speech can often have a lead to hateful actions, and I fear that it could lead to more hate crimes against Muslims. But talking about ISIS, one of the things that really impacted for me was that 2015 began with ISIS motivated violence in Paris, and the year seems to be ending with violence in Paris. So you have these bookends of ISIS related terrorism in Paris. So to me that is kind of remarkable.
So despite all these terrible acts, would you say there are any positives for Muslims in this year?
Well, I see three positives. Muslims won 2 Nobel Prizes this year, and I also think that much closer to home, for example, in Delaware, we had a fabulous conference on social justice, which is important. The social justice conference that was hosted by the Delaware Council on Global and Muslim Affairs really brought all the leaders, political, social leaders, interfaith leaders, law enforcement leaders, and community members together to show how Muslims care about America and how they're trying to improve our society here. So the Delaware Council's Conference on Social Justice for me locally was a major positive, and internationally the 2 Nobel Prizes, the Nobel Prize that the quartet received continues to remind us that there has been something positive that has come out of the Arab Spring, which is the resilience of democracy in Tunisia. So I'm hopeful that if Tunisia continues to hold on in 2016, then the promise of democracy will still remain alive. Now, as far as the Nobel Prize on Chemistry is concerned, perhaps you have more to add to that.
Well, we know that Aziz Sancar, a person of Turkish descent, was a Muslim. He shared the Nobel Prize with 2 of his colleagues in their study of how DNA can repair itself mechanically using chemistry, and he showed exactly the processes by which DNA can repair itself.
I hope that his promise of chemistry can be translated into politics and economics, and maybe we can fix the DNA in the Muslim world, and I hope that we can repair the Muslim world culturally, politically, and economically. So even though we have discussed things from a rather bleak perspective, I wish all of you a very happy new year, and hope and pray that in 2016 the force remains strong with you. And from an Islamic perspective, it's Al-Khawi, the force remains strong with all of us. Thank you. Thank you, Rumi.
Thank you.